An elderly couple, Ray and Bessie, are snowbirds in Texas. Ray always wanted a pair of authentic cowboy boots. Seeing some on sale one day, he buys them, wears them home, walking proudly. He walks into the house and says to his wife, "Notice anything different about me?" Bessie looks him over and says, "Nope." Frustrated, Ray storms off into the bathroom, undresses and walks back into the room completely naked except for the boots. Again, he asks, a little louder this time, "Notice anything different now?" Bessie looks up and says, "Ray, what's different? It's hanging down today. It was hanging down yesterday. It'll be hanging down again tomorrow." Furious, Ray yells, "And do you know why it's hanging down, Bessie? It's hanging down because it's looking at my new boots." To which Bessie replies, "Shoulda bought a hat, Ray. Shoulda bought a hat." Billy Bob was walking down the street and up pulls Bubba in a brand new pickup. Billy Bob asks Bubba where he got the new truck. "Well, I was at the dance on Saturday night and this really good-looking girl starting tell me about her brand new pickup and asked me if I wanted to go for a ride in it. I told her I would. We went out of town on the highway, and then she pulled off on a dirt road, and then she pulled off into the woods. She got out of the truck and took off all her clothes and said, 'Bubba, you can have anything you want.' Billy Bob said that was really smart of you, Bubba, because those clothes never would have fit you." Two nuns are walking down the street when they notice that a man is following them. Sister Michael, the older and wiser nun, says to the young and naive Sister Patrick, "See that crossroad ahead? You go left and I'll go right. He can't follow us both. We'll meet back at the Abbey." So the sisters part and the man follows Sister Michael. Sometime later, Sister Patrick is anxiously waiting at the Abbey when Sister Michael returns alone. "Thank the Lord you are all right," Zrenia exclaims Sister Patrick. "But what happened to that man?" "Well," replies Sister Michael, "after a few minutes I stopped and pulled up my dress." Sister Patrick stares in shock. "Then," continues Sister Michael, "he stopped and pulled down his trousers." Sister Patrick gasps. "Oh, sister, why would you let him do that?" "Because," explains Sister Michael, "a nun with her dress up can run faster than a man with his trousers down." A Texan cowboy was walking down the road when a little old lady walked up to him and asked, "Are you one of those cowboys everybody talks about?" "Why, yes, ma'am, I am." He replied, "The ones who ride around on horses and herd cattle." She continued, "Yes, ma'am, I am." "The kind who ties up those calves and brands them?" She inquired, "Yes, ma'am, I am." Obviously displeased, she scowled at him and said, "Well, you ought to be hung." The cowboy smiled and replied, "Yes, ma'am, I am." Two nuns are ordered to paint a room in the convent, and the last instruction of the Mother Superior is that they must not get even a drop of paint on their habits. After conferring about this for a while, the two nuns decide to lock the room, strip off their habits, and paint in the nude. In the middle of the project, there comes a knock at the door. "Who is it?" calls one of the nuns. "Blind man," replies a voice from the other side. The two nuns look at each other and shrug. Deciding that no harm can come from letting a blind man into the room, they open the door. "Nice says the man. "Where do you want these blinds?" Three nuns were talking. The first nun said, "I was cleaning the father's room the other day, and do you know what I found? A bunch of pornographic magazines." "What did you do?" the other nuns asked. "Well, of course I threw them all in the trash." The second nun said, "Well, I can top that. I was in the father's room putting away the laundry, and I found a bunch of "Oh my," gasped the other nuns. "What did you do?" they asked. "I poked holes in all of them," she replied. The third nun said, "Oh shit." A man went into the confessional and said to his priest, "I almost had an affair with another woman. The priest said, "What do you mean, almost?" The man said, "Well, we got undressed and rubbed together, but then I stopped." The priest said, "Rubbing together is the same as putting it in. You're not to see that woman again. For your penance, say 5 Hail Marys and put 50 euros in the poor box." The man left the confessional, said his prayers, and then walked over to the poor box. He paused for a moment and then started to leave. The priest, who was watching, quickly ran over to him saying, "I saw that. You didn't put any money in the poor box." The man replied, "Yeah, but I rubbed the 50 euros on the box, and according to you, that's the same as putting it in." A doctor and his wife were having a big argument at breakfast. Things in the bedroom hadn't been good for a while, so they were going at it over that. "You aren't so good in bed either," he shouted and stormed off to work. He began his working day and didn't hear a peep from his wife. By mid-morning, he decided to make amends and phoned home. After many rings, his wife picked up the phone. "What took you so long to answer?" "I was in bed." "What were you doing in bed this late?" "I was getting a second opinion." A young, beautiful nun walks nervously into the doctor's clinic. She looks around, closes the door behind her, and says, "Doctor, this is a little embarrassing, but I've been feeling a strange sensation inside me." The doctor, trying to stay professional, asks her to explain. She takes a deep breath, walks over slowly, then suddenly lifts her skirt and whispers, "This sensation, it's getting stronger." The doctor, now concerned, runs some quick tests. A few minutes later, he returns with the results and says calmly, "Sister, you're pregnant." The nun gasps in shock. "That's impossible. I've taken a vow of chastity." The doctor shrugs and replies, "Well then, congratulations. It's a medical miracle." A lady went into the pharmacy, right up to the pharmacist, looked straight into his eyes, and said, "I would like to buy some cyanide." The pharmacist asked, "Why in the world do you need cyanide?" The lady, "I need it to poison my husband." The pharmacist's eyes got big and he exclaimed, "Lord have mercy! I can't give you cyanide to kill your husband. That's against the law. I'll lose my license. They'll throw both of us in jail. All kinds of bad things will happen. Absolutely not. You cannot have any cyanide." The lady reached into her purse and pulled out a picture of her husband in bed with the pharmacist's wife. The pharmacist looked at the picture and replied, "Oh, well now, that's different. You didn't tell me you had a prescription." A nice Italian girl got married. They had their honeymoon in the bride's parents' house. When the time came for bed, they went upstairs to her room. The groom proceeded to take off his coat and shirt. He was extremely hairy. The bride rushed from the room and down to her mother. Mama, he's all covered with hair." Mama says, "He's your husband now. You go back upstairs." The bride goes back upstairs, where the groom is just removing his pants. His legs are also quite hairy. The bride rushes back down. Mama, his legs! His legs are all covered with hair." Mama says, "He's your husband now. You gotta get used to it. Go back upstairs." The bride goes back upstairs. The groom takes off his socks and she sees that half of one of his feet is missing. She bolts down to Mama again. Mama, he's got a foot and a half." Mama says, "You stay here. I'll handle this." A woman seated while flying in economy and holding her baby in her arms was startled when the man sitting behind her bent forward to say, "Ma'am, that is one ugly baby you have there." The woman, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, was so shocked she could barely retort, "Well, I never." The man continued, "I'm just being honest with you, ma'am. I mean, I've seen some ugly babies in my time, but yours is a real showstopper." Quite overwhelmed, the woman called a flight attendant over. The man behind me just hurled the most hideous insult at me, and I demand to be moved to a different seat," she said. The attendant gave her a consoling look of sympathy. "I'm so sorry, but as you know, our flight is fully booked, and until we find someone willing to switch seats, I'm afraid I won't be able to reseat you. We do apologize, however, and if you like, in the meantime, we'd be happy to offer you anything from our in-flight menu, free of charge." "Fine," the woman said with an air of resignation. "But I've never been so insulted in all my life. What a horrible man." "Well, I just said the truth." Zrania could be faintly heard from the seat behind. Hearing that, the attendant resolved to make the woman feel better as soon as possible, telling her, "Any item of food or any alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage, whatever you choose, it's on us," she said. "And if you like, I'll also bring a banana for your comfort monkey." The madam opened the brothel door in Belfast and saw a rather dignified, well-dressed, good-looking man in his late 40s or early 50s. "May I help you, sir?" she asked. The man replied, "I want to see Rosie." "Sir, Rosie is one of our most expensive ladies. Perhaps you would prefer someone else," said the madam. He replied, "No, I must see Rosie." Just then, Rosie appeared and announced to the man she charged £10,000 a visit. Without hesitation, the man pulled out £10,000 and gave it to Rosie, and they went upstairs. After an hour, the man calmly left. The next night, the man appeared again, once more demanding to see Rosie. Rosie explained that no one had ever come back 2 nights in a row, as she was too expensive. "There are no discounts. The price is still £10,000. Again, the man pulled out the money, gave it to Rosie, and they went upstairs. After an hour, he left. The following night, the man was there yet again. Everyone was astounded that he had come for a 3rd consecutive night, but he paid Rosie and they went upstairs. After their session, Rosie said to the man, "No one has ever been with me 3 nights in a row." "Where are you from?" the man replied. "Falls Road." "Really?" she said. "I have family on the Falls Road." "I know," the man said. "Your sister died and I am her solicitor. She asked me to give you your £30,000 inheritance." A woman walks into the produce section of the supermarket and asks the man stocking oranges, "Excuse me, sir, where can I find the broccoli?" The man replies, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we're fresh out of broccoli, but we'll have some tomorrow." The woman walks away, comes back a few minutes later, taps the man on the shoulder and says, "Where's the broccoli?" "I can't find the broccoli." The man says, "Ma'am, I already told you we don't have any broccoli. We'll have some tomorrow." The woman walks away, comes back a few minutes later. "I still can't find the broccoli. I looked everywhere." The man looks at her strangely and says, "How do you spell cat like in catastrophe?" The woman says, "CAT." The man says, "Great. Now how do you spell dog like in dogmatic?" DOG. "Good. Now how do you spell like in broccoli?" The woman says, "There is no in broccoli." The man says, "That's what I'm trying to tell you, lady." 3 nuns die in a car accident and arrive at the pearly gates. St. Peter says to the first nun, "Sister, you've led an exemplary life, performed many good deeds, feed the hungry, cared for the sick. Do you have anything to confess before I let you into heaven?" The nun looks serious and answers him, "Saint Peter, I have to confess something. Once, when I was a young novice and naive about the world, I gave a man a hand job in the confessional." St. Peter is surprised, but he tells her, "Well, sister, that was one tiny mistake in a lifetime of pious service. Wash your hands in the holy water, say 10 Hail Marys, and you can go on into heaven." Seeing all this, the 3rd nun in line taps the sister in front of her and says, "Sister, would it be okay if I cut in front of you in line? The second nun says, well, certainly, sister, but why? The third nun replies, I want to gargle that holy water before you stick your ass in it. A guy walks into the doctor's office and says, Doc, I've been stuttering for years, and I'm tired of it. Can you help me? The doc says, well, I'll have to examine you to see what's going on. So he examines him and says, well, I think I know what the problem is. The guy asks, well, what is it, doc? The doctor replies, well, it's your p***. It's about a foot long, and all the down pressure is putting strain on your vocal cords. The guy asks, what can we do? The doctor says, well, I can cut it off and transplant a shorter one. The guy replies, do it. The guy has the operation, and 3 weeks later, he comes back into the doctor's office and says, Doc, you solved the problem, and I don't stutter anymore, but I've only had once in the past 3 weeks. My wife doesn't like it anymore. She liked it better with my long one. I don't care if I have to stutter. I want you to put my long one back on. The doctor says, nope, a deal's a deal. 3 nuns are at the grocery store shopping. The eggplant they wanted to buy was only available in packs of 4. Distressed, the first nun says, what do we do, sister? There are 3 of us, but the package is for 4. Don't you worry about that, says the second nun. We'll just cook the 4th eggplant for dinner. There was once a man who took great care of his body. He worked out every day, lifted weights, and jogged 6 miles like clockwork. One morning, while checking himself out in the mirror, he noticed he was perfectly tanned everywhere, except for one little spot. Determined to fix it, he went to the beach, took off all his clothes, buried himself in the sand, and left just that part sticking out to catch some sun. A little while later, 2 sweet old ladies were out for a walk. One, using her cane, spotted the unusual sight poking out of the sand. She tapped it with her cane and shook her head. She said to her friend, there's just no justice in this world. Her friend asked, why do you say that? The lady replied, when I was 20, I was curious about it. At 30, I enjoyed it. At 40, I asked for it. At 50, I paid for it. At 60, I prayed for it. At 70, I forgot about it. And now that I'm 80, the darn things are growing wild on the beach, and I'm too old to squat. A gas station owner in town was struggling with sales, so he decided to get creative. He put up a big, bold sign outside. Free fun with owner's wife. Fill up. Paddy, always up for a good deal, pulled in, filled his tank to the brim, and marched up to the owner. All right, I'm all filled up. How do I claim the offer? The owner smiled. Simple, mate, just pick a number between 1 and 10. If you guess it right, you win. Paddy thought for a moment. All right then, 8. The owner sighed and shook his head. Oof, close. It was 7. Maybe next time. Paddy grumbled, but drove off. A week later he came back, this time with his buddy John. They both filled up, and Paddy, determined to win, walked up again. Okay, let's try this again. The number is 2! The owner grinned. Ah, unlucky. It was 3 this time, so close. But no prize today. 3 nuns die and go to heaven. At the pearly gates, St. Peter tells them that they must each answer a biblical question to get in, but he reassures them that they're quite easy. Who was the first woman? He says to the first nun. Eve. The gates swing open and she walks in. Where did Eve live? He says to the second nun. The Garden of Eden. The gates swing open once more. Now, seeing as you're the Mother Superior, you must answer a more difficult question. What was the first thing Eve said when she saw Adam? St. Peter says to the third nun, Oh, that's a hard one. The gates swing open, One day, Abe was sitting on a park bench when he sees his friend Jack coming towards him with another gentleman. Jack says to Abe, "Let me introduce you to my friend from the old country. This is Shane Ferguson." Shane Ferguson Abe wonders, "How did you get a name like that?" So Shane replied that his name in the old country was Mottel Rosenschweig. "My uncle, who was in America 10 years before me, told me to tell immigration that my name was Morris Rose. I practiced saying my new name for the entire trip on the boat. I asked the American sailors to say it for me and learned to pronounce it. I was standing in line at the immigration for 2 hours, worrying about everything. When the officer finally asked me my name, I said Shane Ferguson, which is Yiddish for "I forgot already." So that's what the immigration man wrote. A male driver is pulled over by a cop. Man: "What's the problem, officer?" Cop: "You were going at least 75 in a 55 zone." Man: "No, sir. I was going 65. Wife: "Oh, Harry, you were going 80. Man gives his wife a dirty look. Cop: "I'm also going to give you a ticket for your broken taillight." Man: "Broken taillight? I didn't know about a broken taillight." Wife: "Oh, Harry, you've known about that taillight for weeks." Man gives his wife a dirty look. Cop: "I'm also giving you a citation for not wearing your seatbelt." Man: "Oh, I just took it off when you were walking up to the car." Wife: "Oh, Harry, you never wear your seatbelt." Man: "Shut your mouth, woman." Cop: "Ma'am, does your husband always talk to you this way?" Wife: "No, only when he's drunk." One day, a young boy in about 4th or 5th grade auditioned for the school play. After the auditions were over, he was excited to share the news with his father. He had earned a role. With a proud smile, he rushed home to tell his dad. His father, beaming with pride, eagerly asked, "So, what part did you get?" The boy replied, "I got the part of a man who's been married for 25 years. His father chuckled, clearly amused, and gave him a congratulatory pat on the back. "Well done, son. That's a great role." Then, with a grin, he added, "Maybe next time, you'll get a talking role." It's moments like these, filled with humor, love, and a touch of fatherly wisdom, that make us smile. While the boy's role might have been a quiet one, we all know that a good laugh is the best part of any performance. On their wedding night, a nervous young bride hides under the covers as her new husband undresses. He climbs into bed and gently says, "Darling, I know it's your first time and you're scared, but I'll do anything you want. Just say the word. What would you like?" She whispers shyly, "I'd like 69. He pauses for a second, then says, "You want beef with broccoli?" A man from out of town accidentally drove his car into a deep ditch on a country road. Luckily, a farmer happened to come by with his big old horse, Benny. The man asked for help, and the farmer confidently replied, "Don't worry, Benny can pull you out." He hitched Benny to the car and called out, "Pull, Nelly, pull!" Benny didn't move. Then he shouted, "Come on, pull, Ranger!" Still nothing. Next, he yelled, "Now pull, Fred, pull hard!" Benny just stood there. Finally, the farmer calmly said, "Okay, Benny, pull." And just like that, Benny pulled the car right out of the ditch. Grateful but puzzled, the man asked, "Why did you call him by the wrong name 3 times? The farmer chuckled and said, "Oh, Benny's blind." If he thought he was the only one pulling, he wouldn't even try. A blonde had just been in a terrible car accident. Somehow she climbed out of the wreck without a single scratch and was calmly applying fresh lipstick when the state trooper pulled up. The officer stared at the crumpled mess of metal and said, "Ma'am, your car looks like it got flattened by an elephant. Are you sure you're all right?" The blonde smiled and replied, "Oh, I'm perfectly fine, officer." Still puzzled, the trooper asked, "So, What exactly happened here? The blonde explained, "Well, officer, it was the weirdest thing. I was just driving along when out of nowhere. This tree jumped right in front of me, so I swerved to miss it, but another tree popped up on the other side. I swerved again, and there was another tree. Then another. And another." The officer paused for a moment, then said, "Ma'am, there isn't a single tree on this road for at least 30 miles. That was your air freshener swinging back and forth." An American couple are driving through Canada and stop at a gas station to fuel up. As the man goes into the station to pay, his wife calls out to him, "Ask them where we are." So the husband walks in, pays and asks, "By the way, where are we?" To which the attendant answers, "Saskatoon, Saskatchewan." The man goes back to his car, and the wife asks, "Where are we?" "He doesn't speak English," replies the husband. At the airline check-in, Yankel has 3 bags. He puts them down and says to the young lady, "I'd like you to send this one to Los Angeles, that one to Hong Kong, and the last one to Durban." Her face shows signs of confusion before her training takes over, and she says, "I'm afraid we can't do that, sir." "Why not?" demands Yankel. "You did the last time I flew with you." After a heart attack and quadruple bypass surgery, an old man woke up in a Catholic hospital being cared for by kind-hearted nuns. As he recovered, one of the nuns asked, "Do you have health insurance, sir?" "No," he replied. "Do you have any money in the bank?" "Nope." "Not a cent." "Well then," she continued, "do you have any relatives who could help?" The old man thought for a second and said, "Only my sister, but she's a spinster nun." The nun frowned. "Nuns are not spinsters. Nuns are married to God." "Perfect," the man said. "Then send the bill to my brother-in-law." As a fundraiser, the local Hebrew school decided to hold a talent show for the community. The night of the show finally arrived, and the auditorium was packed with community people. One of the performers was a teenage girl playing the piano and singing Hava Nagila. During her song, the grandmother sees a man in the audience crying. After the show, she walks over to him and says, "Isn't it touching that the younger generation is carrying on our tradition?" The man says, "I don't know, I'm not Jewish." "So why were you crying?" she asks him. "Oh, that's because I am a musician." After some months, she wakes up in a hospital bed, and as she gains consciousness, she realizes that her pregnancy belly is gone. A doctor is standing next to her bed, greeting her. "Hello, you have been in a coma for 6 months. But don't worry, you are on good health and will be released soon." She anxiously asks him, "Doctor, what happened?" "What happened to my baby?" "Don't worry about it. The birth went well and your babies are alive and healthy." The doctor replies, "Babies? What do you mean, babies?" "Ma'am, you had twins, a boy and a girl. Your brother has been taking care of them since their birth." "My brother? Oh no, but he's an idiot." "What did he name them?" The woman exclaims. "He named the girl Denise." The doctor says, "That's not so bad." The woman replies, "What did he name the boy?" "Dennephew." The Smiths were unable to conceive children and decided to use a surrogate father to start their family. On the day the proxy father was to arrive, Mr. Smith kissed his wife goodbye and said, "I am off. The man should be here soon." Half an hour later, just by chance, a door-to-door baby photographer rang the doorbell, hoping to make a sale. "Good morning, madam. I've come to—" "Oh, no need to explain. I've been expecting you," Mrs. Smith cut in. "Really?" the photographer asked. "Well, that's good. I've made a speciality of babies. That's what my husband and I had hoped. Please come in and have a seat." After a moment, she asked, blushing, "Well, where do we start?" "Leave everything to me." I usually try 2 in the bathtub, 1 on the sofa, and perhaps a couple on the bed. Sometimes the living room floor is fun too. You can really spread out. Bathtub, living room floor. No wonder it didn't work for Harry and me. Well, madam, none of us can guarantee a good one every time. But if we try several different positions and I shoot from 6 or 7 angles, I'm sure you'll be pleased with the results. My, that's a lot of... gasped Mrs. Smith. Madam, in my line of work, a man must take his time. I'd love to be in and out in 5 minutes, but you'd be disappointed with that. I'm sure. Don't I know it? Mrs. Smith said quietly. The photographer opened his briefcase and pulled out a portfolio of his baby pictures. This was done on the top of a bus in downtown London. Oh my God! Mrs. Smith exclaimed, tugging at her handkerchief. And these twins turned out exceptionally well, when you consider their mother was so difficult to work with. She was difficult? Asked Mrs. Smith. Yes, I'm afraid so. I finally had to take her to Hyde Park to get the job done right. People were crowding around 4 and 5 deep, pushing to get a good look. 4 and 5 deep? Asked Mrs. Smith, eyes widened in amazement. Yes, the photographer said. And for more than 3 hours too. The mother was constantly squealing and yelling. I could hardly concentrate. Then darkness approached, and I began to rush my shots. Finally, when the squirrels began nibbling on my equipment, I just packed it all in. Mrs. Smith leaned forward. You mean they actually chewed on your equipment? That's right. Well, madam, if you're ready, I'll set up my tripod so then we can get to work. Tripod? Oh yes, I have to use a tripod to rest my Canon on. It's much too big for me to hold very long. Madam? Good Lord, she's fainted. A man enters a bar, and the bartender comes over and asks, Can I help you, sir? The man answers, What does a cup of coffee cost in this place? The bartender says, That would be $2.60. All right, I'll have one, says the client, and he takes 26 dimes out of his wallet and he throws them on the ground. The bartender doesn't want to make a scene, so he just picks up the money and he brings the man his coffee. A week later, the same man enters the bar. He orders a coffee again, but this time he pays with a $5 bill. The bartender smelled an opportunity for revenge, and when he brings the coffee, he throws 48 nickels on the ground as change. The client threw 2 extra dimes on the floor and orders a second coffee. A sophisticated-looking lady was returning by plane from Switzerland. She talked to the father sitting next to her. Excuse me, father, may I ask you a favor? The priest replied, Of course, my child. What can I do for you? The woman explained, Here's my problem. I bought myself a new epilator and paid quite a lot of money for it. I think I've exceeded the limits, and I'm afraid they'll confiscate it at customs. Could you possibly hide it under your robe while going through customs? The priest replied, I can certainly do that, my child, but you know I cannot lie. The woman said, You have such an honest and innocent face, father. I'm sure they won't even question you. She handed the expensive epilator to the priest. As the plane landed and the priest approached the customs, the officer asked, Father, do you have any items to declare? The priest replied, I have nothing to declare from my head to my belt, my child. Finding this answer odd, the officer asked, Well, what about the area below your belt? The priest responded, There's a wonderful little device designed for the use of women. However, it has never been used. The customs officer, bursting into laughter, said, All right, father, you can go. Next. One Sunday morning, an elderly pastor was digging through his closet, searching for his collar before heading to church. While looking, he stumbled across a small box tucked away in the back. Inside were 3 eggs and a stack of $1 bills. Exactly $100. Curious and a little confused, he called his wife over and asked, "Honey, what's this box all about?" Looking a bit embarrassed, she confessed, "I've been keeping that box hidden for all 30 years of our marriage." The pastor was both surprised and a little hurt. "But why? Why would you hide this from me?" he asked. She sighed and gently said, "Well, every time you gave a poor sermon, I placed an egg in the box. I didn't want to hurt your feelings." The pastor thought for a moment and smiled, feeling proud. "Only 3 eggs in 30 years? That's not bad at all." But then he asked, "And what about the $100? She chuckled and replied, "Every time I got a dozen eggs, I sold them to the neighbors for $1. After the honeymoon, the new wife told her husband, "I think it's time for you to stop playing golf. In fact, you might as well sell all of your clubs." The husband replied, "You're starting to sound like my ex-wife." His wife looked at him crossly and said, "I thought you said you've never been married before." The husband responded simply, "I haven't." Bill wakes up with a huge hangover. He forces himself to open his eyes, and the first thing he sees is a couple of aspirins and a glass of water on the side table. He sits down and sees his clothing in front of him, all clean and pressed. Bill looks around the room and sees that it is in perfect order, spotless and clean. So's the rest of the house. He takes the aspirins and notices a note on the table. "Honey, breakfast is on the stove. I left early to go shopping. Love you." So he goes to the kitchen and sure enough, there is a hot breakfast and the morning newspaper. His son is also at the table, eating. Bill asks, "Son, what happened last night?" His son says, "Well, you came home after 3 a.m., drunk and delirious. Broke some furniture, puked in the hallway, and gave yourself a black eye when you stumbled into the door." Confused, Bill asks, "So, why is everything in order, and so clean, and breakfast is on the table waiting for me?" His son replies, "Oh, that. Mom dragged you to the bedroom, and when she tried to take your pants off, you said, 'Lady, leave me alone. I'm married.'" A woman arrives home from work, and her husband notices she's wearing a diamond necklace. He asks his wife, "Where did you get that necklace?" She replies, "I won it in a raffle at work. Go get my bath ready while I start dinner." The next day, the woman arrives home from work wearing a diamond bracelet. Her husband asks, "Where did you get the bracelet?" She replies, "I won it in a raffle at work. Go get my bath ready while I start dinner." The next day, her husband notices she arrives home from work wearing a mink coat. He says, "I suppose you won that in a raffle at work?" She replies, "Yeah, I did." "How did you guess? Go get my bath ready while I start supper." Later, after supper, she goes to take her bath, and she notices there is only 1 inch of water in the tub. She yells to her husband, "Hey! There's only 1 inch of water in the tub." He replies, "I didn't want you to get your raffle ticket wet." A retired couple finally settled into their dream home. Quiet neighborhood, birds chirping, peace all around. That is, until the school year started. Every afternoon, like clockwork, 3 energetic schoolboys would march down the street, turning trash bins into drums like they were on a world tour. Bang, 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 every single day. After a few days of Bin Beats Volume 1, the couple came up with a plan. The next afternoon, the husband greeted the boys with a big smile. "You kids are hilarious. You remind me of my younger days. I'll tell you what, if you promise to keep drumming every day, I'll give each of you $1. The boys were thrilled, getting paid to make noise. Score. A week later, the couple met them again. "Sorry, times are a bit tight," the wife said. "We can only do 50 cents a day now." The boys frowned but agreed to keep playing. A few days after that, the couple broke the news again. "Looks like we're down to 25 cents each." The ringleader looked offended. 25 cents? For all this talent? Nope. We're done. And just like that, the daily trash can concerts ended. Peace and quiet returned. And the couple never spent another penny. A woman was angry. Her husband was coming home late again, so she left a note saying, "I've had enough and have left you. Don't bother coming after me." Then she hid underneath the bed to watch his reaction. Soon, the husband came home. She heard him in the kitchen before he came to the bedroom. She saw him walk up to the dresser and pick up the note. He stopped for a minute, grabbed a pen, wrote something down on the note. He picked up the phone and called someone saying, "She's finally gone." "Yeah, I know. About bloody time. I'm coming to see you. Put on that French nightie I like. I love you and I cannot wait to see you. We'll do all the naughty things you like." He hung up the phone, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door. She heard the car drive off as she held back tears and came out from underneath the bed. She seethed with rage and grabbed the note to see what he wrote. "I can see your feet. We're out of bread. Be back in 5 minutes." A man was tired of being bossed around by his wife, so he went to see a psychiatrist. The doctor told him, "You don't have to let your wife push you around. Go home and show her who's the boss." Feeling bold and full of confidence, the man stormed into the house, slammed the door, looked his wife straight in the eye and said, "From now on, I'm in charge around here. I want dinner on the table right away, and after that, you're going to lay out my best clothes because I'm going out with the boys tonight. And you're staying home where you belong. Oh, and one more thing. Do you know who's going to tie my bow tie?" His wife looked at him calmly and replied, "Of course I do. The Undertaker." A man walks into his favorite upscale restaurant and settles into his usual table. As he's glancing around, his eyes land on a stunning woman dining alone at a nearby table. Intrigued, he calls the waiter over and orders the most expensive bottle of Merlot to be sent her way, hoping to spark her interest. The waiter delivers the wine and tells the woman it's a gift from the gentleman across the room. She glances at the man, then at the bottle, and after a moment, she scribbles a note and asks the waiter to deliver it back. The note reads, "For me to accept this bottle, you must have a Mercedes in your garage, $1 million in the bank, and at least 7 inches in your pants." The man, amused, pens a reply and hands it to the waiter to deliver. His note reads, "Darling, I happen to have a LaFerrari, a BMW i8, and a Mercedes AMG GTS sitting in my garage. My bank account holds over $20 million. But as for the last requirement, I'm not about to cut off 3 inches just to impress you. Kindly return the wine." A blonde walked into a flight school, determined to learn how to fly. With all the planes in use, the owner offered to teach her how to pilot a solo helicopter instead. He showed her the basics, started the helicopter for her, and sent her off. After climbing to 1,000 feet, she radioed in, "I'm doing great. I love it up here. The view is amazing, and I'm getting the hang of this." At 2,000 feet, she checked in again, saying how easy it was and how much fun she was having. The instructor smiled, but as she climbed to 3,000 feet, he started to get worried since she hadn't radioed in. Minutes later, he watched in horror as she crashed about half a mile away. He rushed to the scene and pulled her from the wreckage. When he asked what happened, she replied, "I don't know. Everything was going fine, but as I went higher, it started getting cold. I can't really remember much after I turned off the big fan." A rich, bitter old man died, and at the reading of his will, only 3 people who had anything to do with him, his priest, his doctor, and his accountant, were present. The lawyer told them that the old man had no heirs and had made it his aim to die penniless, but hadn't quite managed to spend all his money. He had been instructed to take the remaining £150,000, split it between the only 3 men he trusted, and that they were to ensure each portion was put into his coffin before the burial, so that no one would benefit from his hard-earned cash. He handed them each a thick bundle of money and ended the will reading. After the badly attended burial service, the 3 men made their way to the nearby pub for a drink and to talk about the dead man. "A very strange and mean-spirited man," said the accountant. "Tell me, did you have any qualms about burying him with the money?" "Well," said the priest, "that was an awful lot of money, and the church roof is in bad need of repairs, so I have to confess I did take £5,000 that would allow for its repair." The doctor then confessed, "You know, I do a lot of work at the orphanage, and they always need money, so I withheld £10,000. "Gentlemen," said the accountant, "I'm surprised such upstanding men as yourselves could be so dishonest." "Weren't you tempted?" asked the priest. "Not at all, gentlemen. I put in a check for the full amount." So this fella walks into a bar, and the barman says, "What will you have, sir?" The fella says, "A double whiskey, please." The barman serves him and says, "That will be £6.50, please." The fella says, "I'm sorry you offered me a drink, which I accepted. Therefore, I owe you nothing." A chap sitting along the bar said, "I am a solicitor, and according to the letter of the law, you made an offer which was accepted, so no money needs to change hands." The barman says to the fella, "Right, drink up and get out," which he does. 20 minutes later, the fella comes back in the bar and the barman says, "Get out of here, I'm not serving you after the stunt you pulled earlier." The fella says, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, I've never been here before." The barman says, "Sorry, sir, you must have a double." To which the fella replies, "Thanks very much. A scotch for me and one for my lawyer friend over here." After their first night together as a married couple, the bride turns to her husband and says, "That'll be $50. He laughs, hands her the money and says, "If we're role-playing, you gotta let me know up front." From then on, every time they're intimate, she asks for $50. And he gladly pays. After all, it's their money. A year later, for their anniversary, he goes to the bank and gets a crisp $100 bill to make the evening extra special. He walks in, hands it to her with a smile. She kisses him and says, "That's sweet, but come out to the garage first." He follows her, and sitting there is a brand new Harley, complete with a helmet and jacket. "Happy anniversary, darling," she says. "I saved up all the money from our role-playing. Paid cash, no financing. If we keep the spark alive, maybe we can trade up one day." He just stares in shock. "Wow, if I knew that, I would have given you all my business." 3 girls work together in the same office, all under the same female boss. Day after day, they noticed the boss would always sneak out of work early. One afternoon, the girls hatched a plan. As soon as the boss left, they'd clock out too. After all, the boss never called or came back, so who would ever know? That day, as planned, they followed through. The brunette went home, enjoyed some peaceful time in her garden, played with her little boy, and even managed to get to bed early. The redhead hit the spa, squeezed in a workout, and still had time to meet her date for dinner. The blonde was excited to surprise her husband, so she quietly tiptoed into the house. But as she neared the bedroom, she heard a strange, muffled sound. Curious, she eased the door open, only to find her husband in bed with her boss. Shocked and heartbroken, she gently closed the door and slipped back out. The next day, during their coffee break, the brunette and redhead were already plotting to leave early again. They turned to the blonde and asked if she was in. "Not a chance," the blonde snapped. "I almost got caught yesterday." Paul was over the moon when he finally landed a part-time job at the post office. He'd been job hunting for ages, so when his first day rolled around, he showed up bright-eyed and full of confidence. His very first task? Sorting the mail. Paul dove right in, and his hands moved so fast they were practically a blur. His supervisor watched in awe, impressed by the speed but too amazed to interrupt. At the end of the day, the supervisor walked over and said, "Paul, I've got to hand it to you. You've done an outstanding job today. You're one of the fastest workers we've ever seen." Paul grinned and replied, "Thank you, sir. Tomorrow I'll try to do even better." The supervisor raised an eyebrow. "Better? How could you possibly be faster than you were today?" Paul smiled and said, "Well, tomorrow I'm actually going to read the addresses." A local United Way office realized that the town's most successful lawyer had never donated to their organization. Hoping to change that, the fundraising coordinator gave him a call. "Our records show that despite earning at least $500,000 a year, you haven't donated a single penny to charity. Wouldn't you like to give back to your community?" The lawyer paused for a moment before responding. "Did your research also tell you that my mother is gravely ill and drowning in medical bills far beyond her income?" Caught off guard, the fundraiser stammered, No, I didn't know that." Or that my brother, a disabled veteran, is blind and confined to a wheelchair. The caller began to apologize, but the lawyer cut him off. Or that my sister's husband was killed in a car accident, leaving her to raise 3 kids alone with no financial support. Feeling completely humbled, the United Way rep stuttered. I had no idea." The lawyer sighed, then calmly said, "Well, if I don't give them a dime, what makes you think I'd give any to you?" A middle-aged professor was busy shuffling papers in his campus office when a knock echoed from the door. After a brief scramble to tidy up, he opened it to find an elderly gentleman standing there, beaming with nostalgia. "Mind if I come in?" the old man asked warmly. "I used to work in this very room 30 years ago, when I was a professor here." "Of course. Please come on in," the professor replied, stepping aside. The old man slowly walked around the room, taking it all in with a sentimental smile. "Ah, the same old room, the same wooden table, the fan still creaking away, and the same window looking out onto the garden. Even the same old desk." But as he leaned in to inspect the desk, he spotted a young woman crouched underneath it. Startled, the professor stammered, "Oh, don't get the wrong idea. That's my daughter. She dropped her earring and she's just looking for it." The old man let out a chuckle and, shaking his head, replied, "And the same old story." A man steps into the confessional and begins, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." "What is your sin, my son?" the priest asks. "Well," the man says, "I used some terrible language this week, and I feel awful about it." "When did you use this awful language?" the priest inquires. "I was out golfing," the man explains. "I hit an absolutely perfect drive. Looked like it was going to clear 250 yards. But then, out of nowhere, it smacked right into a phone line hanging over the fairway and dropped straight to the ground, barely making it 100 yards. "Ah," the priest nods knowingly. "Is that when you swore?" "No, Father," the man replies. "Then what happened?" "Well, right after that, a squirrel darted out from the bushes, grabbed my ball in its mouth, and took off running." The priest leans in. "And that is when you swore?" "No, not yet," says the man. "Because just as the squirrel was making its escape, an eagle swooped down, snatched it up in its talons, and soared into the sky, with my ball still in the squirrel's mouth." The priest, now intrigued, asks, "Surely that's when you swore?" "Nope," the man says. "Because as the eagle was flying over the green, the squirrel squirmed, dropped my ball, and it fell perfectly toward the hole." The priest's eyes widen. "And then you swore?" "Not quite," the man continues. "The ball hit a tree, bounced through some bushes, ricocheted off a rock, rolled through the sand trap, and stopped just 6 inches from the cup. The priest lets out a deep sigh, shaking his head. "You missed the putt, didn't you?" A teacher was teaching her 2nd grade class about the government, so for homework that one day, she told her students to ask their parents what the government is. When little Johnny got home that day, he went up to his dad and asked him what the government was. His dad thought for a while and answered, "Look at it this way. I'm the president. Your mom is Congress. Your mud is the workforce. You are the people, and your baby brother is the future." "I still don't get it," responded the little Johnny. "Why don't you sleep on it then? Maybe you'll understand it better," said the dad. "Okay then, good night," said little Johnny, went off to bed. In the middle of the night, little Johnny was awakened by his baby brothers crying. He went to his baby brother's crib and found that his baby brother had taken a crap in his diaper. So little Johnny went to his parents' room to get help. When he got to his parents' bedroom, he looked through the keyhole to check if his parents were asleep. Through the keyhole, he saw his mom loudly snoring, but his dad wasn't there. So he went to the maid's room. When he looked through the maid's room keyhole, he saw his dad having love with his maid. Little Johnny was surprised, but then he just realized something and thinks aloud. "Oh, now I understand the government. The president is screwing the workforce. Congress is fast asleep. Nobody cares about the people. And the future is full of shit." In the piece, there's a long passage of about 20 minutes during which the bass violinists have nothing to do. Rather than sit around that whole time, some bass players decided to sneak off stage and go to the tavern next door for a quick one. After slamming down several beers in quick succession, one of them looked at his watch. "Hey, we need to get back," he said. "No need to panic," said a fellow bass player. "I thought we might need some extra time, so I tied the last few pages of the conductor's score together with string. It'll take him a few minutes to get it untangled." A few moments later, they staggered back to the concert hall and took their places in the orchestra. About this time, a member of the audience noticed the conductor seemed a bit edgy and said as much to her companion. "Well, of course," said her companion. "Don't you see? It's the bottom of the 9th. The score is tied and the bassists are loaded." A doctor at a mental hospital thought it'd be fun to take his patients out to a baseball game. For weeks before the outing, he trained them to follow simple commands to make sure everything went smoothly. When the big day arrived, things were going perfectly. As the national anthem began, the doctor shouted, "Up nuts!" and the patients all stood proudly. When it ended, he called, "Down nuts!" and everyone sat back down like clockwork. Later, when the home team hit a home run, the doctor cheered, "Cheer nuts!" and the whole group clapped and shouted with excitement. When the umpire made a terrible call, the doctor yelled, "Boo nuts!" and the patients booed in perfect unison. Feeling confident, the doctor left his assistant in charge and went to grab a hot dog and a beer. But when he returned, the stadium section was in total chaos. People running, shouting, and security rushing in. Frantically, the doctor found his assistant and asked, "What on earth happened?" The assistant sighed and said, "Everything was going fine, until a vendor walked by yelling, 'Peanuts?'" After years of delivering a mail, it was finally Ned the mailman's last day on the job. As he made his final rounds, the first house surprised him with a thoughtful gift certificate. At the second house, the family handed him a box of fishing lures. The third house gave him a fancy set of cigars. Ned was feeling appreciated and touched by all the kindness. But when he reached the fourth house, something unexpected happened. A beautiful blonde answered the door, dressed in a silky robe, and without saying a word, motioned for him to come inside. She led him upstairs, where she gave him the kind of farewell he'd never imagined. Afterwards, she brought him downstairs to a table loaded with a huge breakfast: eggs, sausage, toast, and hash browns. Ned could hardly believe his luck. As he reached for his coffee, he spotted a crisp dollar bill tucked under the cup. Confused, he looked up and asked, "This has been an amazing morning, but what's the dollar for?" The blonde smiled and said, "Well, last night I asked my husband what we should give you for your retirement. He said, 'Just give him $1.' She grinned and added, "The breakfast part was my idea."